Welcome, everyone, and I want to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Deb Johnson for agreeing to come and share her ideas, what I consider her kind of, I would say her raw forecasts and her astute assessments of issues on a wide range of topics that I enjoy reading daily. I've become a fan. For me, that's something, because as someone who has very little time, when I decide to read someone's work every day, it's because it strikes a chord with me. And I want to say that the amount of knowledge that Dr. Johnson has and is willing to share, along with her candor, vulnerability, real-time self-assessment, and I would also say, well, I would say bravery is the word I'm going to use. She's a brave person, and I don't know whether she would agree with me, but I do know what kind of courage it takes to speak out in writing, and in these times, you can't care too much about ruffling feathers, and feathers need to be ruffled, and it's one of the reasons why I asked her to come and speak with us today. There's not a horse owner out there, I don't believe, who is aware that we've got many more things to think about than we did 6 or 8 or 10 years ago, beside just whether we have enough hay in the barn for the horse. So I would say that Dr. Deb is someone who I don't imagine would mince words on anything that needed to be said. And so for this reason, I've asked her to consider a couple of questions that I had for her, but also, and more importantly, I'd like her to bring you, as she has brought me as a daily reader, to her level of awareness, keen level of awareness of the things that horses need us to know. So I do want to apologize for a long introduction, but I'm going to let you take it from here.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I appreciate you asking me. People frequently say I'm brave, and it kind of worries me because, in part, I think why should we have to be brave to speak up for the animals that we have dedicated our lives for? And I guess after 3 decades of being a veterinarian, I'm tired of just sitting back and watching everything become less about the animal, the horse, the whatever animal, and more about rules and quote unquote standards and things that ultimately are just about money. The bottom line is it's just about money, and it's no longer about the animal. And that bothers me. I mean, I'm not saying that veterinarians shouldn't make money. It's a profession. We went to school. It costs us money. It costs us money to be a veterinarian, but it shouldn't just be about the money. And I feel like it's become only about the money.
Well, that's one of the things that I run into almost every day with clients of mine, and I'm wondering, what is it that we can do about it? And what are you doing about it to help other veterinarians and to also enlighten your clients? For example, people who might have to leave the area, get another vet, find another place, find help for their animals where, for example, they only have 10 and 20 and 30 vet franchises without anybody who can speak up or make a decision. What is to be done? What is the direction people can go?
You know, I unfortunately there's not an easy answer for that. It would be great to say, oh, we just need to bring in more young people that are off of the farms and ranches, which absolutely we do. Don't get me wrong. That really should happen. But at the cost of education, it's almost impossible, regardless of who you are, to come out and get started. And so these young people have very good intentions of going to school and coming out and going back to their home area, but then they come out of school, $300,000 in debt, give or take $50,000, and they can't afford to go back to the clinic in their hometown because it's run and owned by somebody who's been there for 30 or 40 years, who has everything paid for and can do things less expensively. And the clients are used to that type of medicine. And the new kid comes in, and that doctor, because they don't charge more for what they do, they can't afford to pay the new vet what the new vet needs in order to pay off their student loans and pay for their house that they want to buy and their vehicles that they want and or need. And so then they commit to working for a corporate company, even though they don't want to, but that corporate company is going to pay them $150,000 a year, give them all the time off they want, and they're going to pay $100,000 towards their student loan debt, which is, a signing bonus sort of thing, which is kind of hard to pass up. So that's where they go because they feel like they can't afford to go back to their hometown. And if they do go back and they start a mobile unit and they have a truck and they stock it, and then they spend all their time driving between places and they charge a lot because their debt is a lot, and then people stop calling them because the unfortunate thing is they don't know anything and they're charging a lot of money and they don't know anything. And so people stop using them. So then they leave or they go to, move someplace and do something else because they can't afford to live there any longer. So it's not an easy fix. I mean, the bottom line is it's just not an easy fix. And
So have you been in touch when you go to these conferences, and I'm maybe incorrectly assuming that you do, have you talked about this with other veterinarians that your peers, colleagues, people you respect and are have a long-term 30-year friendship with? What do they say?
so
What
I
do you
don't, bottom line is I don't have that 30-year friendship with hardly any veterinarians, which is, I'm sure, part my fault. Part of it is I just am here in my own little section of the world all by myself. And, but when I was a kid working in a vet clinic, veterinarians, they were all like a core group of people who worked together and helped each other. I mean, the town I grew up in, there were probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 vet clinics. It was a fairly small town, and we borrowed stuff and we sent stuff and we covered emergencies, and you worked together. The vets got together once a quarter and had dinner and just talked about things. And, you know, it was, you were in a club together. And when I got out of school and I moved here to this small town, and there was one other clinic in town, and it was like they were the enemy. And I never met either one of the doctors that worked in that other clinic. They never showed any interest in coming. I mean, it was when in the
That
80s,
is sad.
it is sad. And this is a small town. And I mean, in the 80s, it was considered unethical to advertise. I mean, you hung out your shingle and you put your name in the phone book, and that was it. And then when I got out of school in the 90s, all of a sudden everything was advertising, and we got to bring in business and we got to get business from the other person. And, that was kind of, I'm sure, the first nail in the coffin of veterinary medicine, when it became not about just being there for the pets, but being there to make money. And the way we make money is by bringing in more people and bringing them away from other places. And so, it is a lonely profession. It's a very lonely profession. And I would say, I mean, short of when I go to meetings, it was really nice this year. I had a couple people, because I'd been posting things on social media. I had a couple older vets they're actually probably about 10 years older than I am, that reached out to me and wanted to get together and, meet up with me. I had breakfast with one of them. It was fantastic just to visit with somebody who you didn't feel like you had to guard what you say and be somebody that you weren't, not to upset them. And And, but it is not a profession of camaraderie anymore. I mean, I feel like it used to be,
Yes, it
but,
did.
but,
It-
I don't feel that at all anymore. And I haven't, in all honesty, I haven't in the 30 years that I've been a vet.
well, I have to say that I think it is unfortunately something that breeders and trainers and farriers and trimmers and dentists also experience. It's become, and maybe all healthcare, I don't know. I don't, my only involvement with, the pharmaceutical world, because I'm a healthy person, is generally through the pets of my clients and my own when I've had things like, Lyme disease or heartworm or whatever. You have to reach out and get the help you need. However, I think that the trend toward, well, once you begin to scale it back to the lack of passion for the animal and the pursuit of money, in lieu of that, um, that's a decision that people either make consciously or unconsciously, but it has repercussions that affect 24 hours a day. It affects the pace that you think and drive. It affects it affects the quality of your thoughts. It affects everything you do with your employees, your providers, your clients. It affects everything. When money is the goal and healing is not, it creates distance.
It does. And the unfortunate thing is now we are 3 decades into it being about the money. And so we are so far removed from what it used to be. I mean, there are people who, they retire after 20 years. And so they actually never knew what it was like to just be in it to help the animal and to not be in it about the money. And every generation we get further away from it having been about the animal, um, the less chance we have of reining it back in to make it about the animal. I mean, I kid you not, I get emails every day, and the title is always, "We can help you make more profit. We can get you more money." Everything is, it never says, "We can help you become a better veterinarian so you help more animals. We can help you become more efficient at seeing animals or diagnosing things. We can teach you to be better, quicker, faster." Nothing that. Always, always, always 100% money. Profit, money, money, make more money. It's all about the money. And um we have lost the animal in that.
I'm unfortunately acutely aware of that, which is why I called you. It's also why I set up the great debate about the horse's teeth, which has um, started in December. It started as an idea in October. It became a Leslie Desmond Horse Network, which sponsored the great debate about the horse's mouth. Um, the thing we should really address at this moment, I think, is your view, if I might ask, about the horse's mouth and what are dentists today who are veterinarians, the veterinarians who don't get the education in the mouth. I have a very, very high respect for you and some of the things I've read and heard about your perspective. Would you share it with our listeners?
So I don't, when I was in school, I'm sure we had a class on the teeth. I don't remember it. We definitely didn't have any hands-on lectures regarding floating of teeth or working on teeth or doing anything like that. I remember my senior year, one of the gals who I was friends with, who was really big into equine medicine, only wanted to do equine medicine. She asked me if I wanted to go and float teeth on some of the horses in the research um, herd. And I was like, sure. And she had purchased her a set of hand floats because, this was in the this was in the 90s. So
Mhm.
um, power tools were beginning to come on, but there, hand floats were still the thing. And so she and I went out there with a bottle of xylazine, and I held heads and she floated, and she held heads and I floated, but nobody showed us or told us anything. It was just like you put it in there and you did what you thought you did. And I mean, that's the most I ever remember doing anything when I was in school. When I did my preceptorship, the vet that I was with for a month, we went out to this place and we floated teeth on horses. And I asked him to show me, and he had a reciprocating float. And so he explained and talked to me what he was doing. And then it started to get dark, and it was in February in Idaho, and it started to snow. And I was like, you know what, you go ahead and finish these out because it's cold and dark and nobody wants to be out here. And so that was all I got. I bought me a set of hand floats when I got out of before I graduated, and I just did what I thought I was supposed to do. When I left the mixed animal practice that I was at and started my own, I purchased a power float, and then I went to one continuing education meeting that the state had where they brought in an equine dentist and listened to what he said, and I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. And so, for the past 30 years, that's pretty much how I've done teeth. As when I get students in here from the U of A, and we go out and and I always try to get them the opportunity if they're interested in floating some teeth. And almost without fail, they say, I don't know how to do this. We were not taught this. And so I think it's one of those things that if you're interested in it, like anything in life, and you go the extra mile, then potentially you might be able to get more training in it. Certainly outside of your overall vet education, if you want to take extra classes in it, and that, I mean, all the equipment is absolutely there and available, so you can certainly learn. There's, I mean, it's much easier to learn that stuff now than what it was 30 years ago. And
Without
so,
question.
but coming out of school, I mean, you know, you don't really get that much. But in all honesty, you don't get that much in anything. I mean, let's be real. You learn as you go through school. You get base knowledge, and everything else is built on how big your huevos are in order to try stuff.
That's exactly right. And yes, and the fact of the matter is, once you do get out and you graduate and you have met your requirements, or you do your residency or whatever else each school requires to, basically usher you forth as a um, licensed veterinarian in your state, nobody is going to be looking to spend another 30,000 on a proper dental education plus the tools. I
Right.
mean, that's a very, very hard act to follow, as you say, when you walk out owing between 250,000 and $350,000, and then you add a truck possibly, or you get your rich Uncle Peter to come in and float you a couple of low interest loans with a promissory note or not, family generosity or whatever, and suddenly you're awash with ambition and information. And you also realize that the first time you put a power float in a mouth and there's no one there to guide and guard you, that you haven't got a clue what you're doing. And if you haven't got someone there to supervise and basically put you in the apprenticeship role, which this is, what farrier does what master farrier was not an apprentice? What master farrier didn't follow an uncle or some kind of a program? I mean, this is not you can't learn about teeth from a book. It's very helpful to have a good book, but the experience, as you point out, and having a mentor, someone to guide you and show you. I mean, these people who are capable of doing this even are few and far between. I can think of about four. And I'm wondering, what are people supposed to do? What do they do now?
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, the equine dentistry side of things has greatly taken off, and it's an area where I see a lot of very young girls getting into, and women. I mean, honestly, I think women are taking over the world regardless in everything. Um, you just see more and more women in those roles, and my thoughts on the whys probably don't matter, but um I will say on a lot of these young girls that had, they've come and they've asked me, and I've watched their work and watched them work, and there's so much, they're so tentative, and I feel like they leave the horse not better than what they found it and what it began with. And so I feel even with the equine dentist and the education they're getting, it doesn't always translate into somebody who knows what they're doing, if that makes any sense at all.
I deal with it daily. Thank you for confirming what I didn't want to say. Okay.
So, I mean, part of my struggle with equine dentists is it doesn't matter your education if you don't come out and actually help the horse. I don't care what you did and what you went to school, you're no better than the veterinarian who doesn't know anything either. And I would say most of, not all, but most of the horses that come in that have been floated by a dentist and they come in for some other reason, and the client says, by the way, would you look at their teeth or check their teeth? And I'm always, they'll be like, oh yeah, the dentist was here last week. And I look at their mouth and I think, uh, I wish you wouldn't have paid that person that kind of money, because it doesn't look like anything was done. And I don't think they've helped your horse any. And I'm not saying that's across the board. That's whether you're a veterinarian or an equine dentist. We're lacking in making it so that at least there's a base. Whatever way it is, there's no base on this is what we should be doing with the horse's mouth.
Yes. Okay. So my team regularly criticizes me, and for good reason, when I'm conducting an interview and when I'm seeking information and wanting to, showcase someone who I admire, and I absolutely admire, and I'm very grateful for what you're doing. Don't for a moment think I underestimate what it takes to have a voice and to develop the sureness to use your voice. I do have an idea what's involved there. But what I can say is what you've just said about the vets and the dentists is that they're lacking sureness. And they're lacking sureness because there's no horse handling experience in many of their backgrounds. They get graduated. They don't know how to put a new halter on an old horse. They don't know how to put I had someone here. It's a farm where I have some clients, and I had a young vet and her vet tech assistant. Lovely people who are paying their bills and put their all into their education, not know that you don't walk a 16.5 hand high strung horse through a gate that is closing, that no one is holding, that's going to close behind his ribs in front of his hips, and then you turn around, look at him, and yank when he hesitates. I mean, how can you have vet students like this who are accompanied by vet techs? This is a crisis for the horse.
So here's the problem, though. Here's the problem. When you're a student in vet school, you don't get to touch the horses or handle the horses. Okay. They always have one of the techs from the school who are doing that. And when I was in school, I didn't want anybody helping me because I was just prideful and I thought I could do everything and anything. And so I always did things by myself, and I got in trouble for it all the time. But I was very comfortable around horses, and I had a natural ability to read them. And it wasn't anything, it was just who I came out of the womb to be. My parents are both incredible horsemen. It's not like we had we had 6 horses. They didn't, but they were very good horsemen, and I spent my whole childhood watching the horses, riding the horses, on the horses, bareback, feeling them. Just it's second nature. And but most of these people getting into vet school, and let's be real, most of them are women. They are young girls who dreamed of having a horse. Maybe they had a horse, but it was broke, because heaven forbid should you let your kid get on a horse that's green broke or doesn't know anything. And heaven forbid should you let them ride bareback. And people are going to be mad at me for saying this, but without a helmet. And I know your head is important, but there's something about getting on the back of a horse and knowing that you need to figure out how to read that horse and be on that horse and stay on that horse, or you're going to fall off and hurt yourself. That really helps you to learn how to be around a horse and to read a horse. And, you know, nobody gets that opportunity because we protect our children. And it's like, oh, Susie, be careful. So you send the horse to the trainer, and or you buy a kid horse because you don't want little Susie falling off her horse and potentially getting hurt. So they don't have any. I mean, everybody's riding broke horses these days. And instead of, you know, letting your kid go get on the back of some half wild creature and figuring it out on their own. And I'm not saying that's what you should do if you're not comfortable with it, but I tell you what, you learn a whole hell of a lot about a horse when you crawl on the back of a horse that's green broke, and you have to figure out how to communicate with it and let it feel secure so that you can feel secure. And we just don't have that anymore.
Well, you're speaking my language. It's the way I grew up also, and I will just say that I'm not at liberty to divulge what I know, but I want you to sleep a little better tonight, because I do know a few people who are running the youngsters through that now. So there are a few little enclaves left where kids are able to run through the woods bareback and get a dose of what's real, and piece it together that way. I have a couple of friends who actually run riding schools like that, sort of off the grid, if you will.
I mean, let's be real. You learn about horses by being around them, and by being around them in more of a natural environment, in a horse that is not just broke to stand there, you know, figuring out how to approach one and how to get on one, and what it feels like when you fall off and how not to fall off, because you know it's going to hurt. And we so protect our kids these days that now we have generations of children who do not know how to read a horse. They don't understand horses. I can tell you that of all the kids that have come through here, the vet students, and even my employees, who there's probably, and I've been open almost 20 years now, there's probably less than 5, maybe 2 or 3 only, that I could trust with the horses, to be able to hold them, that I knew that they would be able to read the horse and take care of them. The rest of the time, I'm paying attention and I'm really watching and I'm doing most of the handling, because that's just how they are. And I mean, I literally had a vet student this year who only wanted to do equine medicine, and she was scared to death of horses. She never once came out to the barn, never once had anything, and yet she was going to graduate and do only equine medicine. And I just didn't know how that was going to happen.
Was she from this country, or was she?
No, she was from the East Coast. So the bottom line is, as long as veterinary schools, and again, people are going to be mad at me, but as long as you're doing a DEI sort of trying to get people in and meet quotas and meet stuff, instead of who has the most desire to just be around the animals, and who's going to be good at it. When I applied to vet school and I had my interview, they actually gave me a box with nuts and screws in it, and I had to put my hands in there and put together nuts and screws.
Oh, good. Oh,
And
that's that. Oh, would you please refresh my memory? Which school was that application to
Washington,
for?
Washington State.
Yes. Okay.
I mean, granted that was a long time ago, but at least they could see that, you could do something with your hands. And,
Yes.
we have, because we are, and it still comes down to a parental thing. We are raising children who do not, we're not allowing them to fail. We're not allowing them to figure anything out. We're not allowing them to be bored, so they actually use their brain to figure stuff out. We don't put them in a position that they have to figure anything out on their own. And so they go through school, everything's on the computer. The teachers are all there to help them. Nobody gets left behind. That's the motto for most of the schools, no student left behind. So they're all swept along together. I was just talking with my office manager today. We were on a walk, and her son he's just finished his freshman year in college, and he's got an advisor, a counselor, and a guide or something. He's literally got 3 people to help him figure out how to take his classes and do his classes and get the help he needs. And I was like, man, I had an advisor, and I never even talked to them until I needed them to sign a piece of paper so I could graduate.
I was
Outside of
working,
that,
I was working 2 jobs to get through my first deal, and I did my homework at 2 in the morning. I mean, what on earth are you? Is that really how it is now?
right? And then, it's no wonder the cost of education is so high, because if you have to have 3 people for each student to make it through, you got to be paying those people. But and so that's just what it is, and that continues on into, when you go to vet school, everybody gets a trophy. We don't want to upset anybody. We don't want to push anybody beyond their comfort zone. They need to have a safe place. We can't expect them to actually do anything that they're not comfortable with. If you don't want to cut on an actual animal, then here's a stuffed toy. Cut on this simulation. Do this.
So
And
I have to interrupt for a minute. Are there no actually live animal dissection examples or so is it possible to imagine that a vet will have to be doing surgeries having never worked on a live animal or done a dissection by the time they've graduated? Is that
I do believe that all the schools are still using cadavers for anatomy. As far as I think there's varying levels if you want to do surgery on a terminal surgery type thing or not. To be honest with you, I don't, I'm 30 years removed. So up until this past year, I haven't been really super in thinking that much about what these kids are coming out of. But I will say, I mean, when I was in school, we didn't do that much. I mean, I think we had a goat in one for our large animal surgery that was a terminal surgery. And I think we had in junior surgery a dog that maybe we did a terminal surgery on. I don't really remember, but I only spayed off ferret the entire time of my senior year. So it's not like we used to get all this experience and now we don't get any. I mean, I'd never even given a horse an IV injection in vet school. I mean, they didn't let you touch them because they were client animals. So, I mean, I don't feel like that's changed any. What's changed is when I got out of school, I just went and did it. I didn't feel like I needed somebody to show me what I was going to do. I was a vet and it was my job to figure it out. And
well, also you grew up, if I could interrupt, you also grew up with horses, which the rest of these people are not growing up with, and you had other resources. If you didn't know how to do an IV or understand the difference between putting something in a vein or an artery, somebody was going to be there to tell you,
Yeah, and I mean, I can't, I wouldn't say that, to be honest with you. But I think we just came out and we just knew we had to do it. But we also spent our whole childhood figuring out how to do stupid stuff without dying. And so you were okay taking a risk. Kids today are these young people coming out, they are scared to death to take a risk. And they're afraid of the consequences. They're afraid of making a mistake. So it puts them at this huge disadvantage versus somebody, when we were there 30 years ago. Like I said, we spent our whole childhoods trying to find out how to do stupid stuff and not die. And so, you go give a horse an injection and it tries to kill you. You got to figure out how to get the shot in it so that it doesn't kill you without getting killed. And now kids don't have childhoods where they try not to die. They have childhoods where they're super protected. And so they go out there and they look at this horse that's trying to, they go to give a shot to, and it won't stand still, and it's, pins its ears and it throws its neck and it backs away, and they don't know what to do. And so they just tell the client, I can't help you. And for me,
is that really what they say?
yeah. And they've been saying that for a decade, because
Okay.
I had an associate a decade ago that I hired in 2016, and I sent her to float teeth at this place, and she couldn't get a shot in one of the horses, and so she just didn't do it. And she just told them, I can't do this. I can't float your horse's teeth. And I'm thinking, man, I would have been way too prideful to ever say that. I don't care what it took. I'd have gotten that shot in that horse. And I mean, there were times when I was young when they would bring in unbroke horses, and I would be hanging from the bars of the horse trailer to get a IM injection in the horse to try and get it quiet enough that I could get a halter while I was hanging from the bars over the horse's head.
I get you. Let me just say, I am not a cattle girl, but I've been in those situations with cattle, and I'm cattle are not my main call, but what you're describing right there, I've done with cattle.
In all honesty, to be a good large animal veterinarian, in my opinion, you have to have some MacGyver in you. So if you didn't grow up watching MacGyver,
I know
you're kind of screwed before you even get started.
Okay, so hold on one second. Just for those who don't know MacGyver, can we just take a second and talk about what it is? It means you gotta have the chops to figure it out. And
when I came down to this small little town for my interview, and this horse showed up while I was there, and I don't even remember what was wrong with it, but we had to hang fluids. So I climbed up in the rafters and I used baleen wire, because that's all they used down here at that time was wire. And I jimmy rigged this whole situation up so that we could hang these fluids in this ancient old barn. And the client says, you do a really good MacGyver. And I think you have to have that. You got to be able to look at something and figure out a way to fix it with what you have in front of you.
Right. And I don't know when MacGyver ever was invented or who did it, but I do know what you're talking about, and that is also the way I grew up, so I get it. It's also the way I saw my father operate, and many other people in my immediate environment who could get something done. You basically, well, you're not an alchemist, but in one way, you're spinning straw into gold, which means if you save a horse's life because you can jimmy rig it, then you've MacGyvered it. It's
so much of large animal practice, rural type medicine, not particularly talking about your high end, $1 million horses, but your ranch horse, your backyard horse that belongs to the family without a lot of money. You've got to be able to look at something and think outside the box and do something. And young people today are afraid to think outside the box because they're afraid they're going to get into trouble.
Who would get them into trouble?
You hear all the time, everybody's like, oh, the clients are going to sue, the clients are going to sue, the clients are going to sue. And I'm sure people sue places, but in all honesty, everybody should. If they don't, they should. That's their own fault. But you have liability insurance. You've got insurance that pays for that. So being sued by the client, you just turn it over to your insurance company and they take care of it. So yes, does it raise your rates depending on what it is to a point? Yes, but it really just comes down in the biggest of everything to your communication and your ability to talk to the client. And most people They just want to know that you care. And if you show that you care and it all goes to hell, but you've told them, look, I don't want to kill your horse and I'm willing to try this if you're willing to be okay if it doesn't work, people are okay with that. What they're not okay with is you acting like you know what you're doing and then shit falling apart and then you saying, well, here's your, $20,000 bill and there's the door and your horse
Oh
is
my
gone.
God. Oh my God. That's okay. Yep. All right. Well, there's that. No, I don't know too many people who would be okay with that. Um, so, Dr. Deb Johnson, what are we going to do now? Are you gonna start teaching? Are you gonna start an apprenticeship program? Are you gonna start taking the people I send you?
We have students come through here. We're open to students coming through here. Um, I am old school all the way. I'm so excited because this older vet from New Zealand messaged me this morning, and he somehow came across my page, and apparently in New Zealand it's very much the same all over the world like it is in the United States as far as the cost and people struggling to be able to afford it and nobody trying anything. And that man, I love it. He's got videos on his Facebook page of him doing pyometra surgeries exactly the same way I do them, and he's showing everything. And I was like, you know what? There needs to be more of us that are willing to put ourselves out there to say it doesn't have to be the way it is. It's okay to step back and not have all these rules and not force people to pay for all this stuff, because good grief, I mean, they're still doing surgery out in war zones and helping soldiers that are, blown in half in less than ideal situations, and the people are living. And we have created, we have so desire. I remember when I was in school, they told us they were just really starting to do you deserve to be called doctor and don't let anybody call you anything other than doctor and you should be called doctor. And I remember thinking, what does it really matter? I mean, who cares? If if you prove yourself, then people are going to respect you and they're going to call you doctor. And if they don't call you doctor, what do you care? Why do we care? It's not really about what our title is. Shouldn't it be about our ability to save the animal? And so now here we have these kids, and one of the students this year told me they were told, at least her class was told in school, that they are very important people. They're very valuable. There's not very many of them. They're special because they got into vet school. They deserve respect. They deserve more money. Um, and we've put ourselves on this pedestal that I'm
Well,
not saying that we potentially don't belong there, but who the hell wants to be up on top of the pedestal? Because when you're on the pedestal, you can't help anybody
I'll,
or
I'll
any
say
animals.
I'll say it the way that I've experienced myself when I've been on that pedestal also, quite frankly, not recently, but I know what it's like to be on a pedestal, having um, authored and published a book for a very amazing human being who changed a lot of things about the way horses were trained 20 and 30 years ago. I was there at the right time and I understood what he was saying and I put it in print and there you go. But the higher the pedestal, the harder you fall. And that is exactly my point. And I fortunately wasn't raised by people who kept a damn about any pedestal, so I never did either. I was exalted and stuck up there myself at 30 years ago when I had an opportunity to experience something similar that you're talking about in my own small way, not connected with veterinary medicine, but it's if you are not in control of your ego, I would say, or if you are not self aware, or if you are falsely uh, impressed with your own potential, but not your own delivery. And that really is a difference that needs to be discussed, because these people who are told this and prepped this way are suffering because they know that they can't put a new halter on an old horse or walk one through a gate when they haven't had an upbringing with horses, but they're responsible for everything. It's really unfair.
Well, I think part of the issue too comes down to the fact that the people coming into school are really coming from families that have more income. And so they've been raised taking their animals to the veterinarian and an expectation of what veterinary medicine is supposed to be. When I was a kid, we couldn't afford to take our animals to the vet. I mean, I remember as a kid, we had the vet out one time for one of the milk cows for milk fever and one time for the colicky horse that died. That was it. The rest of the time, it didn't matter what happened to him. If we couldn't fix it with whatever color spray we had, it was just going to die.
I get it.
And so I came out and still practice at, you know, animals, owning animals. Yes, it's a privilege, but being charged thousands of dollars for something that doesn't have to be a thousands of dollars cost, that doesn't, I mean, we couldn't have ever been able to afford anything like that when I was a kid. And so I've always tried to be, I mean, it's a business. Everybody's got to make some money. I've got 35 employees. I've got to pay them. They all want to make a livable wage. Everybody wants the same thing. That being said, the benefit, especially of a private practice, is I don't have to support all the shareholders. And that's what happens in corporate medicine.
Okay, may I ask a question? You have 35 employees. That's just knocked me off my stool. What do these people do for you? How big? What do you mean? What 35 employees who do what? If I could ask.
So we average 100 to 120 patients a day. So every day I have 4 receptionists, but because not everybody wants to work 4 days a week, and they can't work 5 days a week because they can't handle the stress. So I have probably 6 or 7 receptionist type girls. I have like 9 technicians, 6 of them pretty much at any one time. Maybe I have 10 technicians now. I have 6 or 7 kennel people. I have 3 office managery type people. There's 3 of us veterinarians. There's the yard guy that takes care of maintenance. There's the little gal that comes to help with horses in the afternoon. So, yeah.
My hat's off to you. My hat's off to you.
But it takes that many people to see that many animals to help the animals. I mean, that's the bottom. I mean, the end of the day is if I had half that many employees, I would not be able to help the number of animals that need me. And I am the only vet clinic in 2 counties, not by any choice. It's just everybody else left. And so, it went from 4 veterinary clinics to 2 to just me. And we have a mobile unit that I bought a year and a half ago so that we can go into some of the smaller surrounding towns that don't have a vet there. And we go there once a week to try and help those people there so they don't have to, not everybody has to drive in. Some of these places, they have a lot of elderly people, and it's really hard for them to drive an hour to an hour and a half to bring their animal to the vet. So, we do what we can to help them. It cost me $500,000 to buy that mobile unit and stock it. And I had to hire more technicians and more people to be in it to do it. But it helps the animals.
And you still make time in the morning to write for an hour or 2 and help everybody else who doesn't
That's
have
my mental health time. That's my self-care.
Well,
Some people need to take vacations, and I just need to write to get the thoughts out of my head.
well, it's very effective. Yeah. So, May I ask you one more question? We're sort of at the 9:36, I think. I don't see it that clearly. Could I ask you about hoof care? Do you,
So
I'd like to know how you handle that in your practice.
it's very difficult because we don't have a lot of farriers here. So, and this is another area that is opening up so much, and there's so much information, and it's fascinating to me. And I just wish I had um, more ability to consume the amount of information that's out there. So, I firmly believe that so much of our issues in our horses starts at the feet. Although I will say I am consistently amazed at, or continually amazed might be a better way of putting it, at the number of horses that I have that come in here whose feet are long and their shoes are barely hanging on, and these guys are roping on them or they're using them on the ranch. And I'll be danged if those buggers aren't freaking sound as the day is long. But I think the benefit that these animals have is they are turned out in large areas, so they're moving a lot. They're used on the ranch as well as being roped on, so they're not just doing one thing. And while their feet are horribly too long, um, they're not being messed with so much that their heels are contracted, that, that
Exactly,
that
exactly.
stuff is bad. So yes, they have horrible, terrible feet and they're too long and they're in bad shape, but they're not being constricted and restricted, and they're getting enough movement in their whole body to keep everything else going and flowing.
Yeah, this is, this is prompting me to say that if you're pleased with how we develop what we're trying to produce and share today, I hope that you will talk to me another time, because that opens up quite a bit of new topics for discussion. Do you have any thoroughbreds and Arabs in? I would imagine you've got Arabs, but have you got thoroughbreds in your practice much, or mostly
Uh,
horses?
the largest thoroughbred breeder in the state happens to be a, a client of mine, incredibly good people. Um, so yes, but they tend to raise their babies and then they break them and then they go off to the track. So I haven't, the last time I worked at on the racetrack, was a track vet for 20 years, but have not been on the track. I think the last time I worked the track was like 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. So I have not been on there for the past few years. But the whole underrung heel, long toe, the California type shoe thing, I spent a couple decades trying to convince people that that was not the best way to be running their horses, and probably contributed to the catastrophic failure of the suspensory apparatus, which was so common, especially with really sandy, deep ground. Um, but it's hard to change generational thinking.
Well, that sandy deep ground would get you right into the depth of the Texas Western cutting world. As you know, sandy deep ground, you understand?
Yes.
So, I mean, that's not what you're going to see on track training horses, but the suspensory thing is, I understand you there. What I would ask you, um, if you had, if you were on the stage and had the mic at a hoof conference, the annual hoof conference, one of the couple of annual hoof conferences, is there anything that you would share as a vet who sees horses of all breeds, all conditions, trimmed, shod, poorly shod, well shod, poorly trimmed, well trimmed? Is there anything that you would offer to the vets who do not, I mean, excuse me, to the trimmers and farriers who are not licensed, do not need to get a license, do not most of the time need sedation? Is there anything that you would offer to them, or in any way that you would implore them to
You know what?
consider?
I think the most important thing is to realize that you don't know what you don't know. And so, um, while you were taught one thing, you are only taught what that person knows. That person doesn't know what they don't know either. It's just like textbooks and everything out there. Whoever wrote that chapter in the book only knows what they know. So if there's stuff that's actually true that they don't know, it's not in there. So you only learn what that one person knows. So when you're a farrier and you go to a school and you spend 2 weeks there or 3 weeks there, and they teach you, you are just going to know what that group knows. And that could be true, but there's also other stuff that can be true. And there's stuff outside of that that could be true. And the beauty of the internet is you have access. If you would just keep an open mind, you have access to so much information. And if we could just get, I would say the most common thing I see in horses is your imbalance between your medial and lateral sides. I would say 98% of horses that I have come in are all high on the inside. And so you've got that constant unbalance in the hoof capsule. And if we could just teach people to not look at the hoof, but to look at the collateral cartilage and balance to the collateral cartilage, and to try to, whether you want to do center of rotation or point of balance or Duckett's dot, pick whatever your thing is and get that shoe set back enough so that the horse alignment is at least close to where that shoe is in the middle of your center of rotation, point of balance, Duckett's dot, whatever point you want to use. Pick something and at least get it close to that.
Thank you for that. I was hoping that was something you would address. Have you or any of the people that you've learned from discussed the connection between a displaced or imbalanced or damaged hyoid and the tightening restrictions on the lateral tendons that get locked up at the knee and all the way down to the medial hoof capsule?
I have seen a few little bits of information about that. I don't know enough about it at this point to make any comments. I have found it fascinating, the relationship between the mouth and the lameness. I don't know enough about it right now to speak on it.
That's fine.
I
That's
wish
fine.
I wish I did,
Well,
because I think it's fascinating.
yeah, well, it is one system. We know that. So we can talk about that at a future time.
I mean, they have it in cats. They have cats, if they retain their deciduous teeth, they can have lameness. And they call it I don't remember. But anyway, weird things. But the first time I saw the link between the dental stuff and the lameness, that's what it made me think of, is the cat with their retained deciduous teeth and their lameness issues.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that you have at least a inkling of that, and hopefully we'll research this. I'm going to be in Arizona in the future. I look forward to meeting you personally very, very much. And I want to thank you for just a wealth of information, very generously shared. And do you have optimism?
No, but I'm a pessimist by nature. So I will say I get enough messages from veterinarians who are like, thank you for speaking up, and I feel the same way and I practice the same way. And I think if more of us could get together, I have visited with a man who is interested in putting some money towards trying to get a network of independent veterinarians and um, trying to make more of a public statement about the actual costs and such related to veterinary care. And I have visited with him. And so I do think the needle's moving. I just don't know if we can beat big farm Last year, there was a senator who started to question it, and it went from being something to being nothing. And so I don't know. I don't know if it'll ever, I wouldn't say that I'm optimistic, but you never know. Change can
Would
always
you,
happen.
would you like to be?
I would like to be. I mean, there are times I'm like, oh, maybe this could happen. And then I get caught up with all the things that would have to change in order for that to happen. And I just don't know is if the world, as long as we try to be protect everybody's feelings, I just don't know if it can happen.
Well, let me ask you something personally. How many people do you fire a year?
I don't fire anybody.
Well, then I guess you've taught them to deal with their feelings when you make comments or criticize or try to help and educate them, right?
Yeah.
Are you teaching people how to toughen up and get some sureness or what?
Well, if they don't like it, then they just have to haul their critter someplace else, you know? I mean,
Well, so you answered my question. So basically, you're helping people grow and change by teaching them to toughen up and get their sureness through experience.
trying.
Hats off to you. Hats
Well,
off.
I thank you. I thank you for this opportunity.
Yes, let's not make it the last time. I'm very grateful to you and just want to say we'll look forward to some feedback on your presentation that I'm have no doubt will be glowing and much appreciated. I'm enthusiastic about what the future holds because your voice is going to be widely heard. That's all I can say, and it's going to be a salve to many, and as you say, perhaps or suggest an irritant to some, but they don't matter. Those people don't matter because anybody who puts money before an animal or a human being has already declared where they stand. And if that is the if that's the footing that you want to yield, anybody who's around people like that who doesn't know what that implies will find out eventually. And that will be their lesson. But at this point, I was born at night, not last night, fortunately. So I've had some decades to sort things through. And one of the things that you do as you get a little bit older is you learn to think before you speak, and you learn to take bad feedback with a grain of salt. And you also learn when you get bad feedback to consider the source.
Yeah,
And,
it's
and,
true.
and that's the most important thing is that um, most of the bad feedback that I might 30 or 40 years ago have generated and publicized toward an individual or a concept or an idea or whatever, I don't bother with that anymore because as one grows older, you learn to separate uh, your reality from your effect on your potential effect, your hopefully potentially good effect and beneficial effect on the reality of others, and not follow an emotional riptide out the door and get involved with things where you don't belong. This is something that I think it takes. This is, when you started to describe this generation of protected, can't fail, can't lose, this and that. There was one thing that I wanted to say, and I think I'll take this moment to say it. And here I know that my crew is going to kick me for talking on your time, so to say. But I want to say that there are many veterinarians who, with very, very high expectations from 3 and 4 and 5 generation um, medical families in the human medical world, were expected to be either oncologists, sports, cardiologists, sports medicine people, internists, when they don't make it into the human medicine world, many of the vets that we end up inheriting are just there with their tail between their legs so that they can hang on to their biology and chemistry credits to just slip through because they were expected to be a third or fourth generation medical doctor and didn't have either the focus, or they were coming into this through COVID times, which were hard on everybody. And so they end up spaying cats for a living so that they can hold up the investment that everybody made in them to be the doctor that they weren't. This is a lot of pressure, but this is the kind of thing, these are silent pressures on vets that you don't know what happened to them. You don't know how they got there. But I do know vets that were expected by their long-term families to be third and fourth generation human doctors and ended up having to, fold their tent and just limp off into the veterinary world, which is sad for us, sad for them, good for us if they can overcome whatever shame. How horrible to have shame at that when they're so needed. But I do know that I wanted to mention this because I know at least half a dozen in this area. And this is not an enviable position either. These people need compassion. I want to thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Yeah.